The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.
Hi Rogers, can I ask you something?
Shoot.
What does corruption mean?
Well, summarily, corruption is abuse of public power for personal gain or for the benefit of a group to which one owes allegiance. For example, when a public office is abused by an official accepting or soliciting a bribe. By the way, private people can be corrupt too, like bribing police officers to escape fines.
Okay. So exactly how does that concern me?
Well, do you pay taxes?
I guess, yeah. What does that have to do with this?
Everything. Because those taxes you pay are supposed to facilitate services you use, like water, electricity, roads construction, medicines in hospitals, name it.
Okay, that is much bigger than I thought. But it can be stopped, right?
Well, yes it can, although it may not be as easy as it sounds. And here is the reason why. Corruption roots are grounded in our country's social, political, economic, bureaucratic traditions and policies.
So, what has kept it going this long? I mean, why don't we stop it?
Well, the main reason why it has been here for so long is because institutions are weak, either as a result of poorly defined ethical standards of public service, weak administrative and financial systems, or ineffective watchdog agencies.
What can we do to stop it?
At a national level, we must focus on strengthening the independence and effectiveness of
Hello and a warm welcome to the Hotline Show. My name is Edgar Matthew Karuhanga. As you well know, every Monday we're always here starting from 7 to 9 having a conversation about various issues that are going on in the country. Right now as we speak, we are coming from the NRM structure elections that have been happening last week. Some of the effects have spilled into this particular week. We'll be looking at that because I have the director for the external affairs right at the National Resistance Movement, NRM. I'll request my producer to just work on my sound a bit for the betterment of your own consumption. Thank you so much. In other news, Edward Sebufu was arraigned in court. That was last week. This is the bodyguard of Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. And as we speak right now, he has been remanded back to Masaka Central Prison. This is because this gentleman was charged with robbery, that is stealing a sweater and some equipment from a journalist. That this action actually happened a few months ago when the National Unity Platform President, Robert Kyagulanyi, had gone to for a burial in Luengo district. And in that scuffle, as he was arriving, some journalists were beaten and some property was stolen. Now, according to the journalists from the Greater Masaka Journalists Association, they say that the bodyguards of Kyagulanyi were part and parcel of these confusions. And it is in that regard that Gaddafi, Akileo Kivumbi, and now Edward Sebufu, Eddie Mutwe, have been charged in those cases. As we speak now, the chairperson of the Masaka Journalists, the Greater Masaka Journalists Association, that is Farish Magembe, has confirmed that they are no longer in that particular case because they say the state has turned it around for their own personal interests or the interests of the state. So he says as the journalists, they are no longer pursuing this case because it has turned political. So we will also be looking at the High Command and Security Council meeting that was at Entebbe, where the head of state and commander-in-chief of the armed forces and the CDF were able to meet and talk about some of the issues that are happening in the country. The president said he expects what he dubbed as a disciplined democracy and not hooliganism. He says you should not abuse another person just because you want your idea or your political stance to be, accepted. He says these politics, they will not allow. And he said, according to the meeting they have had, this is going to stop. The CDF Muhoozi Kainerugaba also reiterated that what they're doing in the different operations outside Uganda, for example, Operation Shuja, everything is going on well. He says what they're dealing with in the country is what he called urban criminality in places of Kampala metropolitan, that is Kampala, Wakiso, and the neighboring areas. So we're going to look at that particular issue this evening, and I'm joined by the director for the NRM External Affairs, that is retired Major Council Ambassador Pollar Awich. Feel free to send us your message, comment, or query really, and we'll be able to read these messages as we continue with the program. And it is very imperative or important that you subscribe. Every time you hit that subscribe button, the algorithm pushes this video to as many people as it can. And in turn, we are able to better prepare for you as Digitalk TV, bring you better guests who at the end of the day will inform you, but also make Uganda a better place. So please subscribe. That is at The Alternative Uganda on Facebook, YouTube, and X, but also at Digitalk TV. That is still on Facebook, X, and YouTube. We are streaming on YouTube and on Facebook, so we are on either platform. Allow me welcome our guest for this evening. You're most welcome, sir, and it's always a privilege to have you right here on Digitalk TV.
Thank you. It's equally a privilege to be here with you.
Okay, sir. We'll start off, you've not been here. In fact, last week you were not here on set. How is your life, first of all, but how is the NRM today as we speak?
My life is good. There's no health complications. So I really run the routine life, going for work and reading. And I encourage my friends and viewers to read.
Yes, sir.
So if I go for work and I read my books, I read my philosophy, then I'm okay. About NRM is fine.
Yes.
We are operating constitutionally, both the constitution and the laws of Uganda and the constitution of the party. And therefore there's nothing much. We are on a routine line and we are achieving our objectives, especially that our objective now is put in a timeline frame, because we have already a timeline to work on. So both my life and the party is okay.
That's good. You are the Director of External Affairs, so you do external work for the political party. And I'm privy to know, and this is because I know you personally, you have been in Kenya recently, and you're always traveling, really. What are you always doing there? What is the JD of the Director of External Affairs?
The mandate of the Directorate of External Affairs is wide and broad. First of all, to engage other progressive parties around the world. And there are many parties like us. So the parties which think progressively, which want to update the livelihood of its people, are the parties that we work with. So the Director of External Affairs, one other mandate is to network all those global parties. The other mandate is that under the constitution of the party has what is called branches outside. And the choice of words, the diction there is called branches. Some people call it chapters. It is not chapters, it's branches. Chapters is referred to universities, like Makere NRM chapter,
Yes.
Kiambogo NRM chapter, but for us it is branches. So the constitution provides that in a country, 20 or more Ugandans who subscribe to NRM can form a branch. And such a branch can be equal to a district NRM, like Mbara district, Soroti district, or whatever. Remember, the chairman of such units are members of NEC and the members of National Conference. So part of the work of the mandate of Directorate of External Affairs is coordinate all the NRM around the globe.
Okay.
The other thing is that our political actors, our brothers and sisters in other political parties, they go outside and say their story, and in most cases falsehood. So repeated lies appear like the truth. So if we leave them talk that and we don't contradict, repeated lies appear like the truth. So, and for example, you, even if you didn't have twins, if you wake up this year and start telling people you have produced twins for a whole year and next year, they'll call you a salon, even when you are not.
Yes.
So our friends who go out tell their stories, so we feel we also need to tell our stories.
Okay.
If embassies try to do it because they are government, they said they're interfering into politics. And you know the recent president where Ugandan ambassador in Canada was kicked out.
Yes, she was.
Therefore, it is us, the party, to also go and tell our stories. So that equally falls on the Directorate of External Affairs and much more.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Because not many people really appreciated what you do or really understood what you do. NRM has been conducting structural elections for, grassroots leaders on various levels of the political party. Do you want to highlight how that exercise
Yes, I want to
gone?
highlight, but you mentioned Kenya. Maybe you didn't put it in a question form. And you know me, with the discipline of NRM, I answer questions asked.
Exactly.
But I wish to highlight on the Kenya visit.
Okay.
We went
That
to
was the recent one. Okay.
I came back yesterday. We went back, we went to Kenya with the Secretary General of NRM, Right Honorable Richard Todwong, because the ruling party in Kenya has proved to us that they're a progressive party. If you look at them keenly, in the past, Kenyan parties or even Kenyan political formations, we really are hesitant to call them parties because every election, Kenyans were fond of inventing a vehicle just to ride to State House. After State House, the next election, new vehicles. So the political vehicles were always different. But now we are calling them political parties. Now, Kenyan political parties in the past where you could see openly tribal sentiments. But for once, this last election were issues or class aspirations. That is why the Ruto party called themselves hustlers. Hustlers means a class of people with economic status who are struggling to make their life better. And it is actually referred to the downtrodden, the hustlers. So for once, they tried to unite around the slogan of a class rather than a tribe. So we find them progressive.
So UDA was a class union. It was not really a tribal-based union.
Yeah, that is why their slogan was hustlers.
Okay.
Hustlers, for us we are hustlers. Yeah, so whether you are Kikuyu, a what,
As long as you're a hustler,
hustlers,
you fit.
So they kind of combine themselves into a class. So we find it progressive. So therefore we work a long way. They had initially visited us and we kept them here to see and compare methods of work. And then they had invited us. So we went there and I must say it was so nice. So nice because I always don't cry because I've been a soldier since childhood. When I get a challenge, my brain works like a computer. But when I achieve something, I see something good happening to society, I shed tears of happiness. So me, I only cry when I'm happy. I don't cry when I'm annoyed. Even if you cut my leg now, my head will work like a computer, how to remedy this, how to solve this. So, for example, many things happened that I shed the tears. But for example, the Right Honorable Richard Todwong, we visited the governor, like the Lukwago here, because he was on the delegation that came there.
Governor of Nairobi.
Yes. And remember, their GDP is 19th in Africa. Remember, Africa has 54 countries, but the GDP of Nairobi,
Nairobi County,
yes, is number 19 in Africa, much bigger than Burundi, much bigger than many countries. Whoa. So he's a big man, and because he runs a big economy. So we visited him. And I shed the tears because when I saw the Secretary General inspecting their guard of honor, I felt how two countries are at peace. I felt so good, and I shed the tears. So, and we deal with these parties because parties are the honors of the people. Because parties go from the hierarchy up to the grassroots. And even at the grassroots, members are members of the party. Unlike the executive, if you talk of the executive, that you stretch it so far, you end at a parish level where you have a parish chief who is under minister of local government, but doesn't go to the village, doesn't go to the people. So if you're to unite the two peoples of country X and Y, if you unite through a party, you are uniting the people. And that's why we prefer to unite Ugandans to Kenyans through party line.
Party. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So meaning that the party members in Tororo can meet the party member of or the other side of Malaba and the other side of Malaba. So we do it.
I
so
hope
I was
it's not
happy.
the reason why people are crossing from Kenya to enter Uganda to take part in your structure elections.
Well, that's another debate.
But then
that's
let me
another
ask you
debate.
on that issue. This friendship, this blossoming relationship between Uganda and Kenya comes at a time where you are now, one would say, you're sharing your villainity. Like your bad manners are now the same, the abductions. One would say Ruto and Museven are allied because of their bad manners.
Not necessarily. At least in the work methods of political parties. Maybe if you were to scrutinize the work methods of the state, intelligence agencies, that is another debate. But for us, as a political party, the constitutionality, the humaneness, the civility, we shall project it. Now, if that comes up as an issue as a party, because we are liable or vicariously for the act of the government we have formed, then we shall sort it there. But at least in forms of ideology, we are still committed to a civil constitutional phase.
Okay.
The activities of the state agencies, we are vicariously liable because we won election, we form a government, and we run a government.
Exactly.
So we can't run away from it. But if that is the view, we shall check it.
Thank you so much. That is Honorable Pollar Awich, the Director for the External Affairs at the National Resistance Movement. So let's enter the conversation of the grassroots structure elections that were going on. People were queuing behind their leaders. That form of voting, we don't normally see it here. We only see it in NRM and the local council one elections. It is bouncing back this time round. A lot of issues happened therein. Do you want to first highlight, in your perspective, how was the experience of these elections generally all over the country?
The experience of the election was good. As top management of the party, we were apportioned areas of supervision. Dr. Tangadoi, for example, the chairman of Election Commission, was in charge Ankole.
Yes.
I myself was in charge Acholi. That means the 9 districts of Acholi. A known person you may know is the Honorable Dombo,
Yes,
the Director of Information. Honorable Dombo was in charge Bugisu, and so on and so forth. Therefore, my experience is not theoretical. And I stepped or drove in all the districts except Nwaya. In all the Acholi districts, I was in Agago, I was in Kitgum, I was in Lamour, I was in Pader, I was in Gulu City, I was in Gulu District, I was in Amoro, I was in Omoro. I only left Nwaya because it so happens at that time that the Secretary General was there.
Okay.
So I said, let me leave that for the preserve of the Secretary General. I can't go there when he's there, let him handle. So therefore, to share my experience is not theoretical, I was there. The experience is that it is good. And it awoke us to a lot of things that we did not draw attention. For example, we didn't know, or we had known the support, but we physically saw the support for the party. I passed from in Agago from a place called Kalon Crossing to go to Kidgum, Matidi to Kidgum. I found a day before the election, I found a big group somewhere. So I was inquisitive. I stopped. I saw somebody who was like a leader. Said, you call me that person. They called him. He happened to have been the chairman NRM at a sub-county level. So I asked him, what is it? He said, we are here on NRM activities. Here are NRM aspirants for tomorrow and registrars. So we are meeting to chart out a way of progress. It was a big group of people, like a rally. And the man told me that in this sub-county, nobody professes another party. If he does, it is in his stomach.
Not even UPC.
Nothing. So Therefore, this thing has shown us the support. The other thing is that deaths have been reported for this exercise. And death is not good, but it also opened our eyes to another thing. Still the support for the party. You see, we marketed the party. As our mandate as direct secretariat, we marketed the party. But now, the marketing of the party has brought its own problem. You see, that is what happens in life. For example, you are struggling to industrialize a country. We want industrialization, industrialization, industrialization. Now, should you industrialize, you find a problem of pollution.
Exactly.
So, we marketed the party. Now we are finding a problem of people dying for the party. Now, we are better off to manage the challenge of the popularity than having nothing. Because there are some parties that keep giving JEMA, or even UPC. Even at a parliamentary level, I'm sure they're going to some areas to literally beg, please, Peter, hold us the flag. Alex, kindly help us get the flag. John, help us carry the flag. But here we are, people are dying. So this exercise proved to us the support that when we market the party, again you get the problem. How do you manage now the majority? It's like you are struggling to industrialize. How do you manage now pollution?
Yes.
And also, it kind of made us go near the truth, because there has been debate. Do you really have 20 million members? Do you really have 20 million members? Now, President Museven went to his polling station and edited the registry, the dead, the what, the migrant, and all that. And he found that if we calculate the number in that village, assuming, it is an assumption, in some villages, like in the city, can go up or down. In some villages, it can go down. But assuming it is an average, he calculated and validated that if you multiply this by 72,000 villages, this is the number we have been talking about. So if it validated it, it was like 269, thereabout, or 279. If you multiply by 72,000, it comes to the 20 million. So President Museven said, now what were they saying? This is true. And yet you find, like in Gulu City, I was in Gulu City, we had to call police, 4 pickups, anti-riot, because people were fighting in the process of lining up and saying, what, all this. So that means that polling station in Gulu, the number of people who turned up, were like 10 times that President Museven was talking of. Because this is in the city.
Yes, and the other one was a rural area.
Yes, and we had to call police. So the exercise went well. It showed us a lot of things that we didn't know. And now we have to, of course, we also had to see the challenge, for example, of transparency that we want. Some of it led to death. For example, somebody killed another because I am your uncle, and why didn't you line behind me? That is why some people try to argue in favor of secret ballot. But for us, we think that that can be managed.
Why do people have to die? Why? Yes, I understand there is passion for the party, but this person who's dying is a father, is a brother, is a son to someone. Why is it that a family has to bury people every time the National Resistance Movement is carrying out its primary election? I'm saying this because, for benefit of our viewers, even in 2021, in the primaries, people died in the NRM. Why?
Of course, you have already said the love for the party, because people want to get access to positions. But also in the individual case, like if you see on a case by case, you find, for example, an uncle is thinking, possibly this is a boy or a girl he had help when he was struggling through life in school or something. Now he feels bad that you really can leave me and all that. But to explain why people have to die needs an inquiry. For example, would people associate it to the material interest there too? At the village level, then there's no serious material interest.
But there is material interest. NRM's resources trickle down to the last individual, sir.
Yeah.
So there is material.
And that is good, because for us, we are there to meet the basic interests of a person anyway.
No, but you have the money, really. But let's continue.
No, but not as individual, institutionally. as an institutional framework in a mass line approach, not meeting the interests in terms of earn-outs or bribe, no. And in the institutional framework, in the programmatic areas, in the policy areas, in the government intervention areas, that is what we focus on. So this exercise showed us a lot.
Okay, but you've not hinted on why people have to die unduly. How you can solve it.
I said how we can solve it. No, first of all, why? I said that it needs inquiry, meaning that I may not have an answer right now. It needs interrogation for us to give a purely scientific explanation. So it needs interrogation, it needs inquiry. But I also hinted that with close relatives, they feel bad because you could have helped this boy or child when he was growing up, so you feel like it is a betrayal.
Okay.
Those are for that one. But the detail that we have to come up with a comprehensive explanation, a scientific one, needs interrogation, needs an explanation. I don't have it at the moment, but it is happening or it has happened. Now, how to mitigate it?
In your own perspective.
How we mitigate it can be, first of all, party discipline. Remember, under the law, it is said that every party must present its code of conduct, register it with the Election Commission. But many parties have not. It is only NRM which has provided a code of conduct.
Yes.
A party like UPC says in its constitution, there shall be a code of conduct. They just say like that.
Yes.
As to when it will come, nobody knows.
Or where it is.
Or where it is, nobody knows. So, so part of the mitigation is party discipline. Party members should be told to know code of conduct, do's and do nots. And therefore parties should take them through, educate them, and where it becomes a criminality, they are punished. But also with party discipline, with the disciplinary measures like suspension, reprimand, and all that and all this. So the party can do it, but also we have to develop the democracy. Develop it in a way that we can conduct it in a way that we mitigate the death itself. So there are very many interventions there.
Okay, let's hope for the best. You talk about discipline. NRM has been in power, at least from 96, we can say almost 30 years. I'm thinking there should be enough discipline in those 30 years for an individual to know where they stop. But there are some irregularities in this election. People were ferried from Kenya to take part in this election. You're talking about democracy. How does that line?
That goes back still to the party discipline, because if it was an inter-party election, for example, NRM was contesting against NUP,
yes,
and you ferry from Kenya, you would put it on the party. That would be an institutional framework for the party. Even if a chairman did it on its own, the party will be vicariously liable. But now where it is individuals at party level, really it must be on the aspirant, the candidate. So the candidate is the one perpetuating. That is the same question we're saying, candidates perpetuating criminality like killing. So this one is not really, still, of course you can say it is party because they're party members, but we can't take it at the same level like if it was NRM contesting with UPC and then NRM brings from outside. And you know, I keep telling you that our borders were separated by artificial boundaries. Under the constitution, we have 56 tribes. It is put in our national constitution as third schedule. It is written as indigenous communities.
Yes.
Did you know that of all the indigenous communities, everybody cuts across the border,
yes,
except the Langis? It is only my tribe which is true Uganda. We are the only one in the center. Yeah. But Busia, their cousins across. Jopadola, yes, cousins across. Bateso, cousins across. Bagiso, cousins across. Karamojong, cousins across. You go to the northern part, they are more actually in Sudan than Uganda. Look, Kakwa, more Kakwa in Sudan than Uganda. More Lugubara in Congo than this one. All through Kasese up to Ankole, they're in Karagwe. Yes. Buganda, they're in Tanzania. Of course, the Rwandese, they are across. So therefore, if we have such elections, it is easy for an indisciplined candidate to go and bring cousins from across, because the cousins are across. And this was a deliberate move by the Europeans, and I'm sure they tried to get Langis outside Uganda, they failed, because Langis are really in the middle.
So what you're saying is that these individuals are personally liable?
These individuals are personally liable, because this was not an inter-party election. It was intra-party. This was an intra-party election, not inter-party. If it was inter-party, it was between NRM and other parties. But intra-party means it is internal. So, and moreover, at the grassroots. So these are really indisciplined members. Possibly our code of conduct had not envisaged that. We should put it in, we should amend the code of conduct to say prohibition of bringing from abroad. We put a provision prohibiting importing voters from outside Uganda.
I was saying the line and this one is saying, who are you? Where are you from? We don't know you. And isn't that also the beauty of queuing? People queuing behind?
Yes, that is the beauty. Because you get to know who. Because if it was secret ballot, you would just come and dump and we wouldn't know.
Exactly. Let me come to something that the head of the Electoral Commission of NRM was saying, that is Dr. Tango Doi. Dr. Tango Doi was saying that it's the RDCs and some MPs that are leading to these challenges that we are being faced in this election. Who are these RDCs in the NRM hierarchy and the MPs that are distorting the electoral process?
I start with RDC. RDC in the hierarchy of NRM are only there for security reasons, because RDCs are chairmen of securities in their district. Even if there was a brigadier in that district, say division like in Gulu, where you have a division commander, or even General Salim Saleh in Gulu, the chairman of the security is the RDC. Therefore, like we ask the police to help, we also appeal to RDCs in as far as maintaining law and order is concerned, because they are the chairman of the security. So some of them come from that window and make mistakes. But RDC are civil servants who ideally are not supposed to be in party activities. But our interface with RDC is because they are chairmen of security in their district.
Does that mandate them to take part in a primary election of a political party?
Depending on what you mean by taking part. To us, the taking part of an RDC
was negative, at least. They were
for them,
negative.
the taking part in what we envisage their taking part to be that all the activities that is taking place in the district is peaceful. That is our definition of his taking part. Now, if his definition is preference of candidates, then that is wrong. Or supporting a particular candidate, then that is wrong. But our we envisage his participation only in as far as security is concerned, because the police is under the RDC. RDC is the chairman of the security in the district.
Yes.
Under the act, by the way, because somebody may think it's just arbitrary. There's a law called National Security Council Act. So under the National Security Council Act, the district, it establishes a district security committee. Now that district security committee with members specified under the act, the chairman of that committee is the RDC. And it has members like the DPC, the army commander in that area and all that. So our interface as a party with an RDC is only to the effect of a security nature. It's not supposed to support a candidate, it's not supposed to support a person, whatever it is.
That's the hypothesis, that's how it would have been. But let's
then
look
it
at
depends
the
on the personalities of the person. You know, many of the RDCs, they're also human beings, and they are picked and put there, and some lack the competency. I hope you are aware about this one of Mbara, who has been sent to rehab, or Mzungu. You are aware?
I've heard.
So it depends on competency, and such competency becomes visible in challenging situation where they are managed. It tests their management or their leadership or competency skills, like a big activity like elections. Remember, election of NRM at that village is bigger than national election. We conduct a bigger election than that of or the judge. Yeah, Biawakama. Because by Biawakama, the voting centers can be at a parish level, 3 villages combined or 2 villages, whatever combined. But for us, the Constitution provides for a voting at a branch. So we have 72,000 voting stations. Biawakama may be having like 30,000 or so voting stations, nearly less than half of what we do. So to have that election in a village can pose a security challenge, especially for a loved party like NRM. Possibly if Jema was having election in a Gulu, the RDC would have no no struggle for security. RDC would just hear Jema is conducting election because they would possibly sit in a hall or a restaurant or something where they have hired, and a few people would finish the business. So it is challenging in this case.
Stray bullets to the Jema party. You mentioned competence, and it's true. Most of the RDCs are not competent enough. There is an example of one RDC who President called up to come and articulate something, and this RDC could not even speak for more than a minute. And he had to say, Minister, come and help. Does Mr. Museven know these people he's giving his jobs? A person who cannot even articulate an issue, sir.
Well, if we were to discuss the competence, all of us have different capacities, including me, including you. And as I said earlier, these are human beings.
But I expect better.
But the presumption is that when they are appointed, they meet the minimum requirement, because these are civil service positions. So they meet the requirement. But of course, some can slip through. But in the case of talking where the president is, sometimes people get intimidated in the presence of the president and fails to talk. So some people can fail even when he can. But about competency, it can be on a case-by-case basis. But they are always vetted. They are always checked. Their background is done. And sometimes if you're doing background paper, there could be a discrepancy between the papers he holds and the physical person. And these are normal challenges we have. I guess even among priests. You could find a priest and who is not as good as the other priest. So, but of course, as they are put in task and positions of responsibility, that's why there is always reshuffle and dropping others and do what. So it's a struggle. That's our society.
Let's wait and see. You're still watching the Hotline Show. My name is Edgar Matthew Karohanga. Director, Honorable, as we enter this election, the National Unity Platform, the party, the leading party that is trying to oppose you, or the alternative political party for government, as we speak, abductions have already started. A case in point is the abduction of Eddie Mutwe and the way he was arrested. And this is one of the many that we don't hear about, according to the president of the National Unity Platform. He says the people they abduct and you hear about are the Eddie Mutwes who have a bit of name, who are known. As we enter the political arena, and we are seeing these abductions that were there prior, that is in 2021, they are happening today. How legitimate is this electoral process?
The electoral process is legitimate. It's legitimate, and you can judge the legitimacy by the overarching law applicable. The Constitution is in place. It sets 5 years regular elections. The electoral acts, relevant electoral acts are there, and we follow. The procedural aspect of nominations and all that is being done. Resources is being availed to Electoral Commission. So the legitimacy is there because we presume that everybody would follow the law. Now the challenges that you are mentioning of arrest and all this.
Arrest of opponents, opposition members.
For us as a party, as NRM, we expect our colleagues to be acting normally. Now, if the state machinery like intelligence, which I am not privy to their findings, or the state machinery, intelligence, police, and courts of law, if they are pursuing their role and it is not correct, then there are available remedies to challenge it legally. Because a state agency, for example, intelligence or police, can allege that Eddie Mutwe did this. And for a criminal matter like that to come up, there should always be a complainant. It is rare that states move on emotion of its own. Emotion of its own here, I mean that the state saying there's something wrong is rare. Even in courts of law, courts rarely move on emotion of its own. One of the incidences that courts move on emotion of its own is contempt, like the case of this guy.
Counsel Aaron.
Counsel Aaron. Contempt of court. Court doesn't wait for a prosecution. Contempt of court, it is because it is the court which is a complainant. And contempt of law is put there to prevent the sanctity of the court. Otherwise, people would come to court and would start undressing and being naked. Okay? So, contempt of court is one few incidences that a court moves on a motion of its own without prosecution, without complainant. Without complainant, prosecution can proceed thereafter. So, even in criminal matters like that of Eddie Mutwe, normally it doesn't move without a complainant. And when a complainant comes to the state and they investigate, it is incumbent on the state to investigate and carry out arrest. Then the state prosecutors can, state attorneys can see whether it is worth sanctioning or not. Now, while that one is going on and the arrest, possibly your other complaint would be the method of arresting. I agree, you may be saying it's okay to arrest any suspect, it's okay. But your issue would be saying, why abduct him?
Why torture? Why beat him?
Now, that one,
humiliate him?
Of course, that is a case-by-case situation that we need to ask the concerned parties. But for us as a party, as a political party and a party in government, what we did was to tell government, because government is there because of our manifesto. So we told government some time back that please pass a law called Human Rights Enforcement Act. And this act really we thought would finish everything. And therefore any group party can proceed under that law. For example, in the past when a police officer comes to arrest you and breaks your leg, if you sue that police officer, because for example prosecution can refuse to prosecute a police who has broken a leg, because prosecution is the state and police is the state.
So it cannot
refuse. Now, when the prosecution refuses, the option you have as an aggrieved party is to make a civil claim, a civil suit. And in the past, when you make such a civil suit, the police would say, don't sue me, you sue Attorney General. Me, I was doing the work of Attorney General. But now the law says you are personally liable. The defense of Attorney General no longer holds. Therefore, when criminal matters occur and investigation occur, there are remedies there too. But for us as a political party, our role, because we have been in power, was to set up an overarching legal systems and system where people have remedies. So, you know very well that the arrest and the investigations and all that are not within the domain of the ruling party. Our domain is to say, to envisage in the event of such happenings, what do we do? As a party, if we could not tell government to pass such a law, then that means we're incompetent. But we did it. We make the law is there. So whoever is now aggrieved in that way should go to the law.
But even in the election, you were, the election of Kawempe, Tadwong was very intentional about saying, please do not beat these people. When you beat NRM, in fact, after the election, before a day to the election, he was like, you have given Nalukola the vote. You have given him the win because you have beaten him. So
that is the position of the party.
So they cannot hear you. You cannot control your own son.
Oh, you see, how to control our own son is not a case by case. That is why I'm saying how to control our own son is an institutional framework to instruct government to pass a law. You are not going to, as a party, you are not going to say, Corporal Kelo, you have done this. Lieutenant Tumusambe, you have done this. Colonel Mwebaze, you have done this. Captain Okurut, you have done this. That is why, as a party, we institutionally instruct the government to pass a law. That is what we can do, so that the aggrieved now follow up their matters. But otherwise, it would be difficult for a party. You wouldn't even have the capacity to investigate. For a party to come up and say, we are pursuing Captain Mutabazi, we are pursuing Lieutenant Okello, we are following Captain Okurut, for this. So that is why, as a party, and who has been in government, we pass a law. We tell government to pass a law. We instruct the executive, please pass a law called Human Rights Enforcement Act. Therefore, if this are happening, then we have remedies for the citizens. The citizens know where to go. They have which law to protect them. That is to the extent.
Oh, you're gaining from the status quo.
How?
You're gaining from the violations. Your opponent is deteriorating.
Actually, you have just mentioned yourself that we are losing. You have mentioned, I think you mentioned...
No, but you stay in power, you maintain your
yes,
power.
you are mentioning that Dr. Tanga Odoi, I think it is him who said, not Todd Wong. Dr. Tanga Odoi said, Dr. Tanga Odoi said that if you do this, you are harming the opposition. If you beat, you are harming the opposition. So how then do you say we are gaining
Because
when we are losing?
You are consolidating power. Your opposition
Not
is
through
down.
that. Not through that.
But this has been the
Actually, it
story.
reduces our... If you would argue according to Tango Doi, that it reduces
your
the
favor
percentage.
in front of the people.
Yes, but it doesn't hurt
But it
us.
gives you power. You
It
are
doesn't.
staying in power. You're consolidating this power for yourself.
No, it doesn't. We were still going to win, only that we were going to win with a higher percentage. we were still going to win, only that we are winning. It is not that we are winning because the beating is happening. We are winning because of the beating, but at a lower percent.
You're reminding me of what Nambi told the council Nalukola, that if I didn't beat you, I would have won you. And Nalukola was like, why didn't they beat you too, if it was about beating?
So,
Yes, sir.
it is not true that the beating keeps us in power.
It has been.
Meaning that we would still win, but the beating actually affects our percentage. If you follow Tanga Doi's argument. If you follow the Tanga Doi's argument.
Okay, his argument may be true, but let's see what our viewers are saying. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are 8 minutes away from the end of this final hour, of today. But before we even delve into that conversation, there was a meeting of the Army Council and the High Command that happened in Entebbe. I'm going to highlight some of the issues that were mentioned therein. The President, who is the Chief in Command of Commander-in-Chief of all armed forces of this country. He was there to, first of all, open up the meeting and the engagement. But in his remarks, he mentioned, he says, this buyaye of Europe, and says this is not the African way of abusing your opponents. President Museven also hinted on what he called a disciplined democracy, and he says non-hooliganism. He says the politics of intimidating citizens will not work. He also mentioned something called strategic security. He said for the strategic security of the country, we have to be sure about that. And then lastly, he hinted on Uzalendo, working together in developing the country. And the CDF, who is his son, but also General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is the commander, the chief commander of the defense forces of this country, he said Operation Shuja is going on well. And he says the only issues that they're dealing with is urban criminality. That's what Mr. Muhoozi Kainerugaba, in areas of Kampala, Wakiso, and Entebbe, that is the Kampala metropolitan. So we want to paint a picture, look into the statements that were made by the Security Council. And of course, does this really talk about the politics we have today? Is this a message that even the state should be listening to? Let me first hear from Director Pollar Awich on this issue. Sir, first of all, generally in the message of the Army Council, and Security Council, sorry, not Army Council, the Security Council and the High Command, what therein did you read? First of all, as someone who has served the state as a soldier, but generally, when they're talking about the security of the country, what do you read in these messages, sir, generally?
Well, just first for clarity, because I always believe that as we discuss, the viewers should also learn facts.
Yes, sir.
It is worth clearing the two bodies, the nomenclature.
The nomenclature.
Nomenclature of these two bodies. And then I will import the third.
Yes.
The first meeting, which happened on Wednesday, was the High Command. And the High Command is provided for under the law.
Yes.
And the composition. That is the highest body in the military, in the army, UPDF. Then after the High Command, which was on a Thursday again, was called Defense Council, the Strategic Defense Council. It used to be called Army Council. The law changed it to Defense Council. Now, Security Council is provided under the Constitution. In fact, Security Council is higher than all these bodies. Security Council is provided for under Article 219. It is a constitutional body. This one is a body provided by an Act of Parliament. Security Council is a body provided by the Constitution. And by the way, for your information, I've been appointed to that.
Wow.
For a long time, maybe you didn't know that.
You really
and that is the highest body. And ideally, that body, a member under the law, under the National Security Council Act, a member is higher than the CDF. Because under that law, it provides for ex-official members. So the CDF, the head of prisons, the head of ISO, the head of ESO, and the head police I've mentioned, whatever.
ESO, ISO.
I've mentioned those. And then SIB, CID. CID. Those are ex-official. And that is a higher body. Therefore,
so even the High Command is under the Security Council?
National Security Council, because National Security Council is a constitutional body. The Defense Council and High Command is a birth of an Act of Parliament.
Okay.
The National Security Council is a birth of the Constitution.
Okay.
So the Constitution takes precedence. So I just wanted to share with viewers those three bodies. Now, back to the messages here. The message we get here is that, first of all, the cohesiveness of the armed forces, the army. It shows that we have an army under one commander-in-chief with thorough command over it. Remember, President Obote was blamed for having no capacity to command the army, to the extent that the 1985 coup happened because Obote had appointed a chief of staff. Can you imagine? That Museven appoints a chief of staff and somebody rebels and says no, no. So when Brigadier Smith Oponachak was appointed chief of staff, but Zero Lara Kelo said no, that was a wrong appointment. He withdrew to Gulu and formed the East Rebellion and drove through Karoma, through Bombo to taking over power. So this meeting shows the opposite, that we have an army under one commander-in-chief with thorough command over it. The other message here is that the army as an institution has a law governing it. Because sitting in this, you can even cite the provision that we are sitting here under section this of the UPDF Act. Even the Wednesday sitting, the High Command, you cite the provision that we are here sitting under section this of the. So it again portrays that.
Under the law.
Under the law. Everything is done under the law. Then the other aspect, the message that brings is that the president continuously passes a message of patriotism through the army. For example, he was telling them what to do, what to be done. Uzalendo, for example, that you mentioned. I don't know whether you know what Uzalendo means. Uzalendo is a Swahili word arising from kuzaliwa. Kuzaliwa is birth. Like if a woman gives birth, ameza. Ameza, uzalindwa. So meaning the birth people, the citizens, so to say, people born from this country. So you can see that the repeated message of patriotism and patriotism. And of course, you also cited the CDF mentioning that. It consciously also tells you the National Army is achieving its objectives. and he lists all the achievements, that these are the achievements and of the army.
So don't we have a disciplined democracy? And what is this hooliganism Mr. Museven was saying, that we need a disciplined democracy, not hooliganism?
I think what he's saying, especially in mentioning in the presence of the army is such a strong national architecture in matters of security. So when the president mentioned this, he's mentioning it in that respect, because even when the army is ideally supposed to be in combat in the field, there's that component of the army that does combat urban terrorism, which is another form of combat. So he was mentioning this in response to those part of the army which does urban combat, urban terrorism. Therefore, many of them has had interface in political coverage. That is, in his opinion, he thinks that many of them may not be putting on uniform, but they hide under political cover. So it is in that respect that he was saying it, and therefore he's saying it's okay. And very many postings you have seen President Museven is saying, if you don't vote for me, it's not a crime. It is your preference. It is your preference, it's not a crime. But it is good for us to be disciplined. And I want to add here that I know for a fact that President Museven, where he has put his fingers, he succeeds. I have followed him since I was a child. And if it means that we should have political discipline, he will intervene.
And he said that they are going to, they've already had this conversation with the security. He said we have already had this conversation.
Yes. That's why I'm saying, I wanted to add that how I wish my chairman of the party and could push further to also bring the discipline of the use of money. I wish we could handle it together, because it's really too much. But for political discipline, where all of us are supposed to be disciplined, use of good language, even if it means passing a law, it will be passed. Because we go to Parliament and ask them, and we shall define what this, because you are now wondering what discipline is. It can be defined in Parliament. Parliamentarians can help define. So that if you think, if there's a fear for arbitrary call for discipline, that arbitrary call of discipline can be institutional by making a law. Remember, a law is a codified aspirations. It's an aspirations which you have just codified it, okay? And then it is a codified aspiration. So it can be put, because a law is meant to prevent a mischief. If the mischief is in discipline in terms of offending others in the use of language and all that, then Parliament can discuss and can even pass a law so that it is not implemented arbitrarily. And that is why sometimes when Museven says this will stop, people think he's going to pick a stick. But he has many avenues, including a legislation on that subject to prevent such a mischief, so that it doesn't look like he's acting arbitrarily in favor of this. A law can strictly be passed, and you know the procedures, the rigorous procedures of passing a law. It goes through the rigorous procedures, committees and all that, and a clear definitions under the law. So the law will define what is it that amounts to in discipline. What is that amounts to hooliganism. A law can be passed, and therefore we have such a discipline. That's why I'm calling and crying that I wish we could also capture the financial indiscipline of candidates coming and throwing things around. Why I'm calling on the financial discipline, because I know that son of Kaguta, when he puts his feet down on something, he gets it. So I wish he could add that on top of this hooligan, so that we have a clean, serene democracy.
The son of Kaguta also mentioned that there is no intimidating citizens. Ironically, the grandson of Kaguta is intimidating citizens, promising them to be killed in the case of Dr. Kiza Besigye, promising them to be killed in the case of Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. How do you ensure intimidation of citizens, yet the people you are talking to are at the helm of intimidating citizens, especially the person of Muhoozi Kainerugaba General?
And that's why I was saying we need to have it defined in law, what amounts to that. And then remedies there too. And the complaint procedures, complaint mechanism. So if we do that, then we could now cater for yours. And so, because if this occurs to me, if intimidation is prohibited, what does it amount to intimidation? Suppose he intimidates me, where do I run to? That's why I'm saying some of this will have to be dealt with institutionally, so that it's not done arbitrarily. Because if you do it arbitrarily, others may intimidate, and yet it doesn't want others to intimidate. So that is part of the broader scheme of things.
But I want to sit in the mind of Mr. Museveni. If he's speaking...
By the way, let's say this about the intimidation. Do you know Honorable Ziwa, who was a former speaker, East Africa? During the last election in Nakawa, Ziwa went to a polling station. Nope, beat her and chased her away. She didn't even cast her vote. That there were so many intimidation even here. And yet we, like in the north or other places where NRM was popular, that thing never happened that you hear NRM did that. Never. In fact, this really makes me even wonder those who think NRM can rig. Do you know that in the whole of West Nile, the whole of Acholi, the whole of Lango, the whole of Tesu, the whole of Karamoja, NUP doesn't have a single polling agent. But still in those places you hear a declaration that Museven has got 60%, this one have got 40%, or Museven has got 80%, those are have got. If we are that rigging, why didn't we declare the whole thing? Not a single polling agent. Why don't we just say the whole of Lango voted for Museven, the whole of Teso?
But he swept northern Uganda.
No, but the percentage is known. We know which district voted more. We know which voted less. Now, if we were that thugs, why is it that in districts where there's no single polling agent of NUP, the entire north, tell me which polling station had a polling agent of NUP, but we still declare what they have got. So where is this rigging coming from? Really?
You know, rigging is not just the stealing of the ballot. But
we need to define what rigging is.
Of a fraudulent election can tantamount to irregularities in that particular election. When someone is beaten on the campaign trail, arrested, abducted, return forms taken, internet switched off, that tantamounts to irregularities.
And yet for us, we are thinking it is that which reduces our winning. For us, we are saying it is maybe, according to Tangadoy, at least I quote him, it is that which only reduces our winning. But if the definition of rigging was tampering with figures, come on, the entire northern NUP doesn't have a single polling agent. And yet you find some districts, we are declaring 70% for Museven, 40%. Why would we? And yet, so this thing of rigging, let guys say, and I'm not about to plead guilty for your definition of rigging. Your definition of rigging. Because you have shifted from the definition of ballot rigging to other rigging.
Yes,
that one can be discussed. But really, if we cannot rig the ballot rigging, then why would we be interested in this kind of rigging? The easier rigging is the other one. Do you know how deep it is in Agago to declare NUP votes in Agago? Deep in the village. Deep in the Amoro. Deep in the village. In a Pader. Deep. Where they don't have a polling agent, but we declare.
Sometimes they don't even have
if we had this, then we would rather leave voting, leave beating, and then we rig the other one.
Let's get back to Mr. Muhoozi Kainerugaba and Mr. Museveni's statement. If Museveni is saying that there's someone intimidating Ugandans, can't he talk about Mr. Muhoozi? Oh, is he oblivious of the reality on ground? Is actually Mr. Museveni in power?
No, but I think the president alluded to a disciplined army, a pro-people army. An army that should respect the wishes of the people. I think he made it clear there. We may not have had the detail, but he made clear about the disciplined army, the pro-peopleness, the non-torture. He has been talking about this. The non-torture has been talking about it. So I don't know to what depth or specificity you want him to do it, but as a principle, as an ideology, he has been advocating for a disciplined army. He has been arguing against disciplining people. At one time, he was even explicit about beating. So He has mentioned that even in this last Army Council, he did mention about a disciplined army, and sometimes alludes to the historical development of NRA, how disciplined it was. So to what extent you want him to be specific or mention the CDF, I don't know. I can't now be there to package his message.
Okay, thank you. As we conclude, sir, on this program today, where do we go, especially if we are to stop? And I always like to finish on a solutions perspective of coming back to the reality of, hey, let's be better as a people. How do we be better? Especially when you're talking with security operatives. As we gear up for this election, that already I feel the energies are already rising, if they are not already high. How best should the security operatives hold this particular electoral process, sir?
How best the security operatives should hold this? Guidelines are always given. First of all, the law is there, and guidelines are there. So these are properly worked out guidelines, which involves the terms of conduct and how the engagement the security should do.
Yes, sir.
So it should be followed as such. And then security should be there to wait to be called when the electoral because it is the mandate of electoral commission. So the electoral commission, the security agency should wait for a call from electoral commission to be called so that they act. They shouldn't come on a motion of their own. Unless they detect, say, terrorism about to blow up a polling station or terrorism about to blow up something to cause mayhem. But in a crowd control, in crowd control areas, matters of public crowd control, the security should wait for the electoral commission to call them. Two, also as the political class, we should be disciplined. Because sometimes it is us who start confusion and therefore inviting the security. So we should be disciplined. We should have our code of conduct working. We should talk to our members, and therefore we should behave ourselves into the conduct that does not attract the security agency thinking there's a breach of peace. So it works either way. First and foremost, the guidelines, the laws must be followed by security agency. Two, security agency should wait for a call as to when does election commission want them to intervene. Three, political actors like us, controlling our party members, we should be disciplined enough not to attract the state agency thinking there's a breach of peace. You see, the work of police, for example, is to maintain law and order. What does that mean? It means if you're going to a disco, go and dance in peace. If you're going to your garden, go and dig in peace. If you are lining up in electoral voting, line up in peace. If you're doing secret ballot, do in peace. If you don't do it in peace, if there's breach of peace, that is when the police that is when the police or the state comes in, because it is supposed to be an arbiter among people to make sure people do maintain law and order. Therefore, those are my summary of what security should do in this thing. I repeat the summary. One, follow the law and guidelines. Two, wait to be called by election commission to intervene. Three, political actors should also be disciplined, not to attract unnecessary state intervention. And
also listen to the electoral commission, because we were at the pre-tally event in Makerere Kavule, I think around the Kawempe election, and Byabakama was very intentional with all the commanders, security commanders that were there. Please do not beat people, please. The following day, these people were beating people, and I'm like, did they even listen to Byabakama? Lastly, this is a question from a gentleman called Opio Peter. Opio Peter, thank you so much for watching. Opio told me to ask you, are you going to stand in any elective position come 2026? And the background of this question was...
Where you is? You, me, or which?
You,
okay,
Honorable,
okay.
Are you going to stand, Honorable Peter, Pollar Awich? And in his mind, he was like, I know that gentleman, one time he stood in Lira. He did not, according to him, that you stood in Lira and you did not win. So he's saying, are you going to come back? But is it also true that you one time stood for Member of Parliament in Lira district? I don't know the exact constituency.
So which question should I start with? First, about whether I stood.
Yes.
I did stand. I was a flag bearer for NRM for Lira City West.
Okay.
And the election was won by an independent member of parliament. So I lost that election.
Okay.
So I
he
stood
was
now.
accurate in that.
About my standing, I'm not standing. Why? Because at the moment, I'm at the party headquarters. I'm the one distributing flags, at least at the party level. Because even when it is conducted by Electoral Commission of Dr. Tang Odoi, we sit as top management. The decision that happens, like these internal elections, that's why I told you I was supervising actually.
Yes.
So I'm the one giving out flag. I can't be giving flags and then say this one is mine.
Don't you want
How?
Don't you want that position, lucrative member of parliament?
That is what I was
$10,000.
coming to. The second thing I was coming to is that I would want to be a member of parliament to voice up issues. The position I have now is enough for me to voice. I sit in the top management of the party.
Yes.
I sit in NEC of the party. I sit in National Conference of the party. You have been seeing me attending Central Executive Committee of the party. I even attend cabinet in most cases, including cabinet retreat in Chankwans. Or I'm even invited in State House. I have attended, I've been invited, attended. So by far, I have enough avenue to send my voice. So I didn't want the parliament for the sake, I wanted where I can have a voice. 3, in terms of emoluments, where I am is pretty fair enough. So unless somebody really wants millions and millions and millions. So if you consider the fact that I'm now at the party headquarters, I'm the obiter, that is 1. 2, if you consider that I sit in all the forum. 3, if you consider that by remuneration I'm fairly okay, then why do I need to go to be a member of parliament? We have members of parliament, nearly the entire top management are either former ministers or former MPs. From Richard Todwong was a former minister. Honorable Namayanje was a former minister. The National Treasurer Uwundu was a former minister and former ambassador. Deputy of Uwundu, Deputy National Treasurer, was a former member of parliament. Director of Mobilization, Honorable Seninde, was a former minister. Information is Honorable Dombo, was a former minister. Election Commissioner, Honorable Omach, was a former minister. Honorable Kinobe was a minister. So all the people there are former ministers, and none of them is contesting, because where we are keeps us busy enough. So you think Honorable Seninde would leave Director of Mobilization, she's at the same level, to leave Director of Mobilization to go back and contest? Maybe it depends on one's wishes. But none of us at the party headquarters is contesting.
Okay.
Because we called on people, those who are going to contest, because the constitution of the party provides when to retire or to resign before you contest. The constitution says if you are the secretariat and you want to contest, resign before this time. But none of us have said, we are here, let us conduct it for those who are contesting. So for the person who asks, tell him, the name is a man, that I'm not contesting, and I've stated the reasons why I'm not.
Exactly, and not many people can articulate their reasons why. Sir, please give us your parting shot as we conclude.
My parting shot is in a package in the name of the 2 issues. That is for the national, the Defense Council resolutions and High Command, and also for the party, is that the country is for all of us. And we should therefore work towards it in uzalendo, the way the President Museven said. We should love our country and do everything good. And also act within the law. And none of us is above the law. But also, therefore, the security officers are alive to that fact. And they are trained to be patriotic and non-partisan. The other aspect I want to say as a parting shot is that NRM, we put in this primary election and we have proved our popularity. We have proved that we have the big number. And therefore I call upon the party members to continue supporting.
Thank you so much. It was a privilege having you on the show. I respect how knowledgeable you are, how timekeeping, and how respectful you are here at Digitalk. At least, I would like to say that you practice what you preach. for the many people I know, not just NRM candidates, but people generally, it's not often that people do the things they speak. But you have a track record of doing the things that you speak, and you have served your party and your country in your own realm. So
we thank God
honored
for
to
that.
have you, sir. Thank you so much to our viewers who have been watching from the time we started up to now. You've been watching the Hotline Show. This evening I had retired Major Honorable Pollar Awich, who is the director for the NRM External Affairs. I'll see you again tomorrow, and tomorrow we'll be talking about a couple of issues, especially here in Buganda. Twino mutaka agenda kubeera naffe wano olunaku olw'enkya, era tugenda kuba nga tutunuulira emyaka 13 egya Katikkiro Charles Peter Mayiga ng'akutte eddamula ya Buganda. Biki byafunyeemu, biki ebyesaaga okuba nga bitegekebwa oba okuba nga bitereezebwa. So olunaku olw'enkya munneegatteko ku ssaawa 2 zennyini ez'okumakya nja kubeerawo wano okubawa programu eyo egenda kubeera mu lulimi Luganda era mugisuubire. From the entire team, I'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same station. Good evening, Uganda.
The Alternative Dig Talk. Real issues, real talk.